One of the amazing ways that technology works that most people don't pay attention to, and I myself didn't pay attention to up until, and I'm very ashamed to say this, very recently, is how everything is connected, right? And there's an actual field for that. It's called networking. Not like going to meet people, but it's kind of like how technology, data, and all of those things come together. And today, I'm really excited to have Wally on the podcast talking to us about his network his career as a network and security engineer. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Shawan, for having me on board. This is going to be super fun. And just if you guys know, the fact that you're able to watch this video right now is because of the network. It's crazy to say this. This video, when you guys see it, I don't know if it's live or not, but it's going to be somewhere stored somewhere in a server room that's somehow getting to you and wherever you are in the world. So it's a very intriguing field to feel that gives us the ability to communicate and be able to see your face, even though we're in geographically different locations.
It's amazing that you say that because I really, really want to get into it and really unpack what it means. Because, in fact, it's funny like how I've learned so much doing this podcast. And I'm gonna get back to the point I was gonna make, but I did want to give you a chance to kind of like, talk a little about your origin story. Tech, for example, and this is something that I've seen in my tech career, is not something that a lot of Black people naturally just gravitate towards. So I'm always excited to know, like, why was it tech for you?
Yeah. So going back to high school, I've always kind of like computers, been playing video games, that kind of stuff. And then you kind of just doing those kind of activities, I guess. And then you kind of just get interested in the internet. When the internet came on, I remember back in 2008 when we first got internet at our home, and that was like the most high speed internet. And that was the craziest thing ever. I think it was called People PC. I don't know if you remember that, but it was just some old technology, super slow internet. And I remember I went to youtube.com and I was watching videos online. And that was like the craziest thing ever to me. And ever since then, I kind of grew into this field and I eventually went to school. But my dad was a civil engineer and I kind of went to that path originally. So I went to school actually for civil engineering for the first year, did physics, did calculus, did all that stuff. And then I ended up not liking that field at all. And then I had to make a decision on what to do while I was in university. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just probably do tech, right? And I ended up choosing a degree in computer information systems, which going back was an interesting decision to make because that degree kind of taught me all the facets in tech, right? From cloud engineering to software to cyber to networking. I learned quite a bit of information in that field. And after that, after graduating, I had no IT experience. I didn't do any internships. I didn't do anything. And I was kind of lost at that point too because I went through university and I had this general degree, right? Computer information systems, which covers like damn near 8 fields in tech, right? And I did that and didn't know what I wanted to do, but I had an uncle who was a network engineer. And he kind of just told me, like, why don't you just do networking? I was like, Why not?" Right? Because I think proximity kind of gets people to do things that, um, you end up just doing things that, family or someone close to you that does. And I was like, you know what? Let me just, see, he's making good money. This seems like an interesting field. Let me just get into it. And I learned more about it. I ended up getting my Cisco CCNA certification. And ever since then, I, did my first interview. He taught me how to pass interviews. And I ended up landing a position as a network engineer back in 2021 in November. And I worked at an ISP, which is like an internet service provider. And I was there for about 3.5 years, 3 years, somewhere around that mark. And I've learned a lot. And I did not have any IT background. I went straight from zero experience to a network engineer. So it's a field that I love working in. It's a unique field. It's a field that not that many people are even in. And cloud, cyber, they all rely on having a fundamental understanding of this particular field. So I've been working in it, love working in it and love talking about it. That's ended up why I ended up creating a YouTube channel. It's called Tech with Wall if you guys want to search it up. But it's a channel pretty much dedicated to network engineering and just talking about what I do on a job, what it's like to be a network engineer, how to get into this field, and just everything network engineering in general. Because a lot of people don't really know about it, and I want to give some factual information of what actual network engineer does. So that's a little bit about me and my background.
I love it. I completely love it. And there's a point that you made that I want to get back to, but I want to give a quick shout out to Nicole. Happy New Year to you too, Nicole. Thanks for joining and glad that you're already catching the lessons. Let's go.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year. We're already 16 days behind, so
Yeah.
let's do it.
You know, one thing that I really like that you talked about because it speaks to the mission of why I even started this podcast in the first place, which is proximity, right? Like just the importance of seeing somebody do it because there's so many things that we want to do as human beings that sometimes feel out of reach. Not
Mm,
because we can't do it, but because we just don't know enough about it. And being able to have that access, being able to ask a question about it. Like a lot of the time, people have the 80% of work that it takes to go get it done, but they don't have the 20% in encouragement, insight. So a lot of the times it's like, I'm not even good enough, or I can't really do it, or people like me don't do that. But it's like if you're like, oh, this uncle or this cousin or this person in my neighborhood, it's like it can't be that serious. And how
100%.
how important is having I think role models is probably heavy, but something in that region, how important is that?
Oh, it's critical. It's critical. I can tell you right now, if my uncle wasn't a network engineer, I probably would not have gotten into this field because it's kind of a field where it's not as talked about, and knowing someone that's actively doing it day by day, you get to actually see them doing it, right? It's like proximity is all about having someone that you know personally doing it, and you see how much they're making, you see what they're doing, you see how cool the field is. You're like, you know what? If he can do it, or he or she can do it, I know for a fact I can do it. And then also having, like you mentioned, having someone who can actively answer your questions or get rid of any doubt that you have. Because when you're in tech, you're gonna deal with so much doubt. Doubt with, is it, am I good enough? Doubt if this is possible. Doubt if I, is this something I can actually do? Right. And then when you have someone actively showing you how to do it, they've done it, they've been through the trials and tribulations, it's way easier to um use that, to your advantage, right? And it's something that I recommend you guys do if you guys are new to tech. Find, it's sometimes it's hard, right? It is hard to find someone that you may know that's in this field, but look for family members. I'm pretty sure there's, tech is it's a very big community. There's a lot of people that are in it, and knowing someone that's actively in it is a game changer, right? And mentorship, whether it's, asking for someone for help, because at the end of the day, you don't know what you don't know. And if you're trying to get into a particular field and you're just trying to figure it out on your own, you're pretty much wasting more time. You're honestly just wasting time, in my opinion, because if someone knows how to get to where you want to get to, you might as well just ask them for advice, because they most likely know how to get there because they've been through it. So, that's a huge thing, and I'm happy to have him in my life because he kinda inspired me to get into this field, and he told me exactly how to do it.
You know, one of the things that somebody said to me that brought, what I had said initially is like, I never really paid as much attention to networking as I probably should have,
Yeah.
is like, there are four components of technology, right? At least modern technology. It's, compute, storage, network, and security. Like those are the core elements. Because again, ultimately, like the whole entire internet is powered by data. And it's all of the questions like, where do we keep the data? Right. Like, and if
Mhm.
we know where to keep it, how do we move it from one part of where it's kept to where it's needed? Right. That's
Yep.
networking, and how do we keep it secure? Right. Like we want people who should access it to access it and those who shouldn't should not, right? And that's security, right? So thinking about it in that way was very mind blowing for me because it's not that I didn't know it, but like I didn't think about it in such a simple and fundamental way. And I'm glad to be talking to you because that networking piece for people who are interested, what's a good way to really think about it? Like, especially on a non complex way, like what's the
Mm.
easiest way to think about what networking is?
No, that's a very good point. And the most simplest way I can provide it is, the network is basically communication. It's very, very simple, and the world is communicated via wires. Like I think I have some cables here. Like this is an SFP. I don't know if you can see it, but this is also a, like a router. These types of equipments where we have, like a RJ45 cable, the world is connected by all these types of devices at the end of the day. And as a network engineer, we maintain that, we troubleshoot that. Like the fact that we're watching the stream right now, the data is being like it's somehow being it's not in your physically in your computer, right? This live stream is not on your computer; it's somewhere else. So you're using the network, which is most likely your internet that connects to an ISP that connects to multiple data centers that has the actual data storage, and then sends it back to you. And this is happening in real time. It's actually kind of crazy how this is happening. Sometimes we make phone calls, video calls, and we don't even understand like how this is happening. Like I'm in Denver, so let's say if I'm making a phone call to someone in Japan, right? I'm not physically there, but somehow my voice, my video is somehow, which turns into data, somehow is getting there,
Mm,
right? And as a network engineer, we're maintaining that infrastructure. It's very complex, I'll be honest, but it is something that you learn over time. There's like local area networks, there's wide area networks, and it's a fun field to work in. It's a field that kind of gets you amped up for at least for me because it's communication. And without it, I mean, we wouldn't have the internet, we wouldn't have social media, we wouldn't have YouTube, we wouldn't be able to have this live stream, right? At the end of the day, and that's because of high speed internet. And at the end of the day, there's like underwater sea cables. If you guys didn't know that, there's actually cables, fiber optical cables under the water in the bottom of the ocean. That's gives us the ability to send traffic all over the world, right? And now we have Starlink, which basically is like satellite communication, where we can actually, anywhere in the world at this point. Now you don't even need cables; you can just have the satellite on and be able to communicate. So it's an interesting field. It's a field that requires you to understand communication, and without it, I mean, there is no cloud, right? You can't get to the data in the cloud or the services in the cloud without the network, right? Um, and same with cybersecurity. The network is also the most vulnerable part of cybersecurity, right? With data in transit, sending data from one place to another, that's where data can be the most vulnerable at the end of the day.
mm,
So that's kind of where networking lies, where you have to have an understanding of it, especially to get into cyber. So it's a fun field. It's interesting. I love working in it, and sometimes you just forget how magical it can be.
mm. It's funny when you say that because I remember like principles that keep coming up when you talk about like when the data is at rest or when it's in transit, right? and,
Yep.
and and it's interesting that you say that. So you know, it's funny that you say communication a lot because interestingly, like what networking enables is communication, right? Communication of
Yep.
ideas, things like that. But in itself, it's also a form of communication, like how the systems, data, infrastructure is talking to each other to enable humans then communicate their ideals. Whether it's like me logging on to watch a Mr. Beats video here, and someone in Japan and another person in Djibouti can
Mhm.
watch, like we can all connect to that idea, that content. Um, so at the fundamental level, let's say I'm getting excited about all of the things that you're saying to me right now, and like I want to go do this.
Mhm.
What resource, will be a good way to kind of like learn? I know you kind of like mentioned the CCNA, but beyond that, what are some fundamental principles that, if I can go learn today, maybe go watch like a 2-hour YouTube video on them, are gonna like help me set up foundationally to be successful, as I progress?
100%. So one of the things about networking that makes it quite unique is there's a physical aspect to it. And I already brought up the physical device that you can play around with, whether it's a router, it's a switch, it's a firewall, it's an access point. There's actual physical equipment that you can play around with and actually get tangible real life experience. So you can play around with that. But in terms of like some theoretical things you guys have to know, there's something called the 7 layers of the OSI model, which is basically kind of how data is gets encapsulated and decapsulated, which can be complex to explain, but it's basically the process of how data can be, how data is sent and how it goes about the process of being created and all that stuff. So it's an interesting conceptual to think about. But in terms of how would I learn this particular field for free, if you just want to get like your hands dirty, there is obviously I would watch some theoretical videos on OSI model. I learned about the basics of networking. There's tons of videos online that you can watch. You can go through my YouTube channel. I pretty much cover a lot of those kind of concepts. Learn what a router is, learn what layer two, layer three, layer one is, learn the TCP/IP model, and then after that, I would just get your hands dirty. And I would use a software called Packet Tracer, which is a Cisco, software that they created that basically allows you to mimic a real life network. So it's a tool that you can use. It's a tool that I use myself to get actual real life experience because in production when we're working as network engineers, most we're touching equipment, right? We're configuring devices, right? And these devices need to have settings, right? We're adding IP addresses, we're adding routing protocols, we're doing certain things to it to make sure data can be sent. And one of the easiest way to do that is use Packet Tracer. I have, you can go to my YouTube or go on YouTube and search it up. But there is it's a free software that's super cheap, super easy to use, lightweight. You don't need to like buy a virtual machine. You don't have to make an AWS subscription or anything like that. Simple. You use that, you build networks, watch tutorials on how to do it. And if you guys enjoy it, then you can move your way up to like higher level softwares. But in the beginning, I would just say start off with Packet Tracer and just work your way up from there. Because if you can do that and build those labs, you're going to be in a better position than most people. Because CCNA is also a great resource. I got that certification myself, but certifications can only take you so far, right? Certifications are great; they're fantastic, but at the end of the day, you need to have tangible skills, because tangible skills. I always say the skills pay the bills, right? And if you don't have the right skills that companies are looking for, then you're not going to be a favorable hire. So don't go for book knowledge. Go for actual tangible skills, and you can do that by using Packet Tracer, which is basically a network simulation tool.
You know, you touch on a very hot topic, and I almost want to hold your feet to the fire on it. Certifications.
Hmm.
Uh, so I want to. There was something that I heard recently about cybersecurity certifications like Security Plus are not the be all end all that they were sold to be. That in fact, someone said the reason why a lot of people are going to get frustrated and not going to get the jobs is that cybersecurity is not really an entry level job in most cases.
Hmm.
That a lot, because to be able to do cybersecurity effectively, you almost have to have like industry experience in some sense and understand how systems and all those things work. Like if you're just going off of I did a course, I did this, I did that, it may not be sufficient to help you. Does networking fall within that same category? And if it does, how then can someone surmount that challenge?
Yeah. Yeah. First of all, I'm not like hating on them, but they are not like, they're not as good as they used to be. I'll tell you that right now.
Mm,
And the reason and just to preface this, at least it's what my uncle used to tell me. He used to say certifications back then in 2010, if you got a certification, you're pretty much handed offer letters, because they were such a rare thing and not that many people were in it. Now there's a lot more saturation and there's a lot more people that have certifications. So now you have to make yourself stand out. And obviously, cybersecurity is, in my opinion, still a senior level field in tech. It shouldn't be seen as a beginner field, in my opinion. Networking, you have to, because with security, you have to understand networking, at least to some degree. You have to understand subnetting, what an IP address is, what a network is, because you're securing that, right? If you're securing something you don't understand, that doesn't make any sense, right? So obviously with networking, you do need like not like like a certification can do you justice, but more importantly, you just need the skills. Because companies hire people, because I got hired with just the CCNA, and I had the skills from doing the packages for labs. So you don't really need as much experience or like knowledge as you would need in cybersecurity, because it is a most in fact most cybersecurity professionals were network engineers, right? It's almost like a natural progression to go from networking to cybersecurity. So, in my opinion, I think it's like a tier down. You don't obviously don't get those amazing salaries that the cybersecurity professionals get, but you can still make a decent amount and actually get your foot in the door. Which a lot of people end up doing is they end up choosing network engineering as their first place, learn from there, and then use that to get into cybersecurity. So you don't really need certifications. I've helped people get into it without certifications. Some people can get it with certifications. It doesn't matter. The common denominator is, do you have the skills? And you can get those skills without a certification. So how do you go about those skills? It's literally either getting mentored by someone who's actively in the industry, learning from them, or doing those network simulation tools, right? Because networking is literally just the thing with cybersecurity. Sometimes it can be broad, right? There's GRC, there's security engineering, there's network security, there's a lot, right?
mm,
So with networking, you're just hyper focused on just the theory and then the fundamentals, routing and switching, which is the two main areas of networking. If you can learn that, you can land a job and then just from there use that skill set to eventually get into cybersecurity. So certifications are fine, right? It's up to you whether to get it, but just know that it's not gonna guarantee you a job. It's not gonna, it may increase your odds like a very slight amount, but the bigger lever is going to be your skills.
mm. And that's valid. In fact, when you say that, it almost casts my mind back to MBAs. Like
Mhm.
MBAs are very useful,
Yep.
but everybody has an MBA now, right? So it's like,
Mhm.
you did have to come with something extra, right? Like it won't hurt to have it, but it's not the be all end all, right? Nobody's just gonna hand you a job, just like you said, just by having a certification. You almost have to prove that more. And speaking about proof, of course, the standard way to still prove today in this day and age is your resume, right? Like that's the first thing that anybody's going to see. And before they
Mhm.
talk to you, it's like that thing. Being someone who's been successful in this industry, what are the things that may hold someone back on their resume, or help them, if they got it right, if when they're going for a network or security, or similar work, in this area.
Yeah, so the thing that's really going to hold people back is going to be their lack of experience, and
Mhm,
people are going to be like, "Oh, I don't have. How do I get experience?" Or like, maybe you're coming from a field that's not related to networking, or you have no IT experience. Sometimes you're going to have to make your own experience, right?
mhm,
And sometimes your experience doesn't have to be paid, right? You
mhm,
can do a lot of volunteer work, especially with networking. You can go to a business, say, "Hey, let me see like what's wrong with your internet. Let's see what we can do, how we can troubleshoot it. How can we maybe fix your firewall settings?" There's things you can do for free by asking people, right? And getting actual tangible experience just from that,
mhm,
right? And then putting that on your resume because I've seen because I when I help people in this particular field that want to get in, I noticed that they rely too much on I have the degree and I have this certification paper, and then that ends up not really helping them. What matters is actually creating your own experience, even if that means volunteer work, right? And then you kind of want to pitch it like, I've done this before. I know like how I can benefit your company, and then using that to your interview. Because sometimes what people do is they just put all their education, and then they just put like some random project that they did, and that's it, right? And I always tell students, if you're going to, you might as well show it, right? So that means whether in video format, record yourself doing a project, or making your own website, or something that shows proof that you're able to do the actual skill set, and then also another cheat code is like I said, it's mentorship by asking someone who's actively in the industry, what do you do on the job? Like,
mhm,
what exactly do you do on the job? So you can like at least use those principles. Like, for example, like before I became a network engineer, I didn't know about ticketing or like Jira or like change management. I didn't know any of these like protocols that we do on the job as network engineers.
mhm,
So having that context is going to be really important as well when you go into the interview,
mhm,
right? Like if you go into an interview, you don't even know what Jira is, or you don't know what like change management is, or like you've never troubleshooted anything in your life, you're gonna sound like you're an amateur. And companies, truthfully, in today's market, they don't want amateurs. They want someone who's proven, who's able to do the job.
mhm,
Obviously, and the good news is, guys, if you're scared, like, oh, like, what if like they know like I don't have like real experience? Well, they'll know that, right? When I my last company, my last day there, I basically my director told me like, "Hey, Wally, like I knew you didn't have experience, but we took a chance on you because I showed faith in my skill sets that I'm able to do the job."
mhm.
Right? And sometimes that's all it takes to do that. So that's the
A-
game.
And you said something important that I did see when we were doing, we had a skilling program, or similar to a boot camp, if you like.
Mhm.
And there was a thing that we learned from the vendor that was very interesting. So they had this other model in the other market where they were serving. And what they would do is midway through the course, they will make the students create companies, right? So
Mhm.
they'll name the companies, they'll determine what the company wants to do, whether it's like a online delivery or like
Mhm.
a shop, whatever it is. And everybody will give themselves roles based on what they were learning. And they would actually start to solve problems based on that. So they could have those actual companies on the resume, because it doesn't matter. Like I could be, father and son enterprises. It doesn't matter. It's a company. But the goal is like you're not lying. I think that's where the distinction is.
Mhm.
ESO is a mock company, and you can speak to that because ultimately there's a way that recruiters evaluate resumes, that if they say they're looking for 1 to 2 years of experience, if on your resume it doesn't show relevant experience, you're gonna get cast aside
Yep.
before they even know. So how do you frame it in a way, especially if you've gone through something like that, which will be factually true? Of course, it was a made up company, but it was still a company, right?
Mhm.
Then second of all, you can then speak to, because that's the most important thing. Like if you go to Afrotech, for example, and you're talking about your project. I've literally had a guest who got a job at Netflix. Literally, in fact, he wasn't trying to get a job. He was just having a conversation randomly at the Netflix booth with someone about the fact that he was a software engineer working on distributed systems. And the person randomly also happened to be working on distributed systems. So they end up having this whole 30-minute conversation about distributed systems. It's like, you know what? Why don't you come work for us? Essentially.
Wow.
Because it was the proof of the work. So I like the way you broke it down, because I think the more people understand it from that lens, the easier it becomes to actually get over the hurdle, and you can work your way back to what's ideal.
100%. That's exactly right. Is the fact that if you can create that experience, and like I said, it's all truthful, factual. Like you can create your own company. If you create your own company and you work for that company for as a network engineer, who's to say you're not a network engineer, right? People say, "Oh, I'm the only way I could become a network engineer is by if I get hired by a company to become a network engineer."
Hmm.
Right? But who's to say you can't create your own company, create your own corporation, do consulting work for businesses that is network engineering related? It's all up to you on how you frame it and how you market yourself, and that's it.
And the funny thing about, not even, because again, people might be jarred a little bit. It's like, is that lying? No, it's not. In fact, you can leave with that. It's like, I was looking for a job. I was sending applications into the void. It wasn't doing anything. So I'm like, I'm going to create my own company. And I started to do this. That will set you apart from every other person in that interview, guaranteed. Because
100%.
you've demonstrated beyond the skill of networking a different one, which is resourcefulness. And across most roles in tech, if not all roles, that's something that nobody will say, you know what? There's too much resourcefulness on this team. We can't take one more person who's resourceful. Nobody's going to say that.
No, no, and you also have to look from the company's perspective, right? Let's say you have no IT experience, and then they see your resume and it says you worked as a finance person, you worked as a whatever, like as a nurse, and that's all your resume has, right? Because let's say that's the field that you're coming from. If I were the corporation, I wouldn't say, "Oh my God, this is a fantastic person. I want to hire this person." No, I would look for the person who has experience to do the job, right? Because companies, the last thing they want to do is spend years training you, right?
And you still couldn't do it.
And you still couldn't do it, right? They're still gonna, and the thing is, they're still gonna train you on the job, guys. Like every job I've worked at, you're still gonna get trained. You still have to learn their systems, their practices, and all that stuff. So don't be too worried if you're like, this is brand new stuff to you. But oh, did I lose you? Okay, there we go.
Yeah, I'm back. I don't know what
Um,
happened to my connection,
you know where
to my
that's the
network.
network. That's the network, guys. That's the network. That's something called packet loss. If you guys didn't know that, there's packets being sent right now for this stream, and sometimes it gets cut off, and it's some just randomly, and sometimes it's hard to notice because this is a live stream, so it just comes and goes, and then like you won't really notice if you're web browsing, because if the packet drops for 1 millisecond, you're not going to notice.
Yeah.
So, but to answer, I think we were talking about experience and how important it is to frame it on your resume, because you want to sound like you know what you're talking about. Because if you don't sound like you know what you're talking about, if you don't have the confidence in yourself during the interviews to answer those questions, then, I mean, do you really deserve the position? And sometimes you don't even. And here's a big secret: if you have the confidence in yourself to do the job, that is as good enough as being able to do the job. Because I know a lot of people who I've worked with who didn't have experience, but they have the confidence in themselves to do the interview, the confidence in themselves to say, I believe I can do this, as opposed to, I don't know, I've never done this, I don't know this, I don't know that, I don't know. And then they're not going to be able to land the job, because the trick is you only need one job, right? You just need one job. And if you land that one job, you learn on the job, life is going to get so much easier after that. But the question is, how do we get you to land that job? So you
0 to 1.
obviously, yeah, you gotta show that you're a valuable person to the company, right? And that's it. And sometimes people can't show that value.
And that thing that you said is so important, because, in fact, it's so interesting. Like, we had one of my friends, because we usually have almost like this deep moments where we have these conversations. And
Hmm.
there was something it said that I found to be very powerful. It was that, when he was just getting into the industry, he used to get so pissed off about like looking at jobs that would say 5 years of experience, 7 years of experience, 10 years of experience. And
Mm.
you almost cannot understand, like, why are you creating these barriers? Like, I can do it. But now that he's more senior, he understands it, because it's like, even if you could do the job, there's a chance you can't do the job at the highest level.
Mhm.
There's a chance that You might be able to do the work, but can you solve the problems? If you can solve the problems, can you communicate to leadership? Can you communicate to the leadership in the way that leadership wants to be communicated to? Can you navigate the politics? Can you build the relationships? Like, there's so
Mhm.
many things that's required that even if you have the baseline knowledge and understanding, it still does not mean that you have all the competency to be able to do that job. My company now really has, what we call like a competency grid. And it's very useful because literally, like, if you go from like associate product manager to like VP, you literally see the checklist of like what each job is missing. And it's like, for this one is a lot less. Like, we're not expecting you to be mentoring people or to be like, just focus on like this little feature that you're working on and leave
Mhm.
everything else alone. But you see, like, as you go up in maturity, that those things that were not even the options become absolute requirements if you're going to do those jobs. And I think it was a very good way for me to understand that even though these are similar things, they're also so dissimilar in terms of the levels of expectation.
100%. Yeah. I mean, whenever people see like, oh, the 5 years, 10 years of experience, oh, I can't do this. To a certain degree, you can. You depends on your level of experience in terms of, like I said, most of the stuff is just not technical, right? It's
Hmm.
about your interpersonal skills. Can you communicate? Can you effectively solve problems? Can you calm down a room? Like there's certain things that we do on the job. How do you deal with under pressure environments, right? Most people just focus technical, 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 right? And then that's fair. That's good to do. But the problem is if your meta is all technical, and then your communication skills is like at a 2%, then when you go into the interview, the person who has the communication skills of 80 and technical of 40, they're going to be able to explain their technical skills better than you, even though they're technically less gifted than you, if that makes sense. And then
Yep.
it's all about how you show it as opposed to what you know,
Yep.
right? And if you can show that like that stuff, is showing is actually it's more politics, right? You know, like at the end of the day, that's kind of the game, right? And most people don't want to. That's kind of the truth, sadly. Like it's not the person who knows the most, it's the person who can share that he knows him, that he's capable of doing the job.
It's interesting, and I'm not sure that I've said it on the podcast before, but I spent most of my career as a startup founder, and so like most of my experiences were just entrepreneur,
Okay.
but it wasn't tech, right? So I did everything from marketing to sales to product to everything else that you would expect.
Hmm.
But I literally had to rewrite most of my experience as product lead, product lead, product lead, because one thing I understood is like recruiters are not steeped in nuance, right? So if you say you're a founder, they're just gonna throw your resume
No.
aside. They're not
Yeah.
looking for a founder.
Mm-mm.
So it's like if you can reframe what you did within that context, then I can look at you and then say this. It was something I wasn't comfortable with at first, but the level of success I had with that, then in my interviews, I would literally talk about being an entrepreneur. But I realized it wasn't going to serve me to even get me to the interview if somebody looks at it and sees a whole bunch of entrepreneur experiences, like you can't do it. Because, and this was something that the real thing I'm even trying to deduct from there is like, one of the things to do in tech to be successful is to understand who you're trying to communicate to. And it's funny that you
Mm-mm.
said communication because every single day in your career, so whether it's like sending a resume in to be evaluated by a recruiter, you have to communicate the value to that recruiter in the best way they can understand. When you're talking to the interviewer, the STAR method, it's also giving you a framework to communicate to that person to decide that you're the right person by structuring your story in a way that it's displaying this was the problem we're trying to solve, this was what I did, and this was the outcome. And when you're doing the work, right? When you're communicating within your team, let's say you're within a team of engineers,
Hmm.
you have to get super tactical, right? What was the problem? If you're talking to executives who just want to figure out, we keep having these outages, how do we stop them? You're not going to use those same terms. You're not going to be talking about packets and all these other things. You're
Never.
going to say we have this level of dependency on the system. The best way to solve it is this is an old legacy system that does not have the same level of uptime as that other system. So what we need to do is make this investment in this system that checks all these boxes that we've kind of like evaluated and said it does what it should be doing. That way we can increase our uptime and then solve majority of this problem. So it's like the same thing that you're discussing within your team, but you have to communicate very differently to different
Differently.
stakeholders to understand it.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. Communication is everything, especially in tech. I like my first day working. I didn't know, like I'm the worst texter, by the way. Like whenever I send text messages, I'm so late. But like when you're working in an environment, you have to remember, like especially in a production environment, you gotta message your team within 5 minutes. You get an email, you don't wait 3 hours. You see the email, you respond to it as soon as possible. And I had to learn that fast communication is important, but also who you're communicating to is also just as important, right? If they're non-technical, you don't talk jargon to them, right? You're talking to like a project manager, just tell them, okay, we're almost done. We just have a couple switches to change the software, right? Simple, right? But if you're talking to someone technical, then you can kind of get into the weeds and go in whatever you want to talk about, right? So you got to know who you're talking to. And the context of the conversation matters, because if you're not effectively communicating right to the right person, it's as good as speaking a different language sometimes. And if you're doing that, it's effectively as not saying anything, right? So you'll also have to remember that, and it's huge when working in tech. 'Cause most people don't even realize that is, yes, you don't have to understand the technical language, but also how to get other people to understand it. Because whenever you're like most environments I've worked in, it's teams of 20, teams of like I've worked in smaller environments as well. It doesn't really matter if you're a fast communicator, effective communicator, you are a valuable person to that team, right? No matter what. As opposed to someone who's technically gifted and doesn't talk to anyone, doesn't share any documentation, doesn't want to do anything, like they're not going to be as valuable. And then, that can also be an issue. And you can share that value during the interview process as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like, a lot of people, I think there's a certain thought process that people have, and I'm not saying there's not a negative way that that happens, but it's mostly untrue, right? It's that, oh, that person doesn't do anything. The only reason why they're getting promoted and getting all these opportunities is because they're friends with other people. That does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but a lot of the time, most people don't look at being an effective communicator as part of the job description. In
Yep.
fact, a lot of people have a very leave me alone mentality. Well, that's why they left you alone where you were.
No, that is 100% true. It's funny. People are so obsessed with the tech, but then the fact that the people who are getting promoted are not the technical people. It's the people who are
Communicate.
leaders, people who can communicate, and it is just that just how when you learn this over time, right? You're
Yep.
not when people are new, they're so obsessed with, "Oh, I gotta like, get this certification, this," and then like the senior people are like, no, I just gotta. If I want to get ahead, I can choose a different path, and it's much more easier and actually valuable. And I think there's a stat somewhere, and it's like, if you want to, like, the easiest way to get a promotion is by increasing your social skills, right? And I took a long time practicing my social. I used to be super shy in school. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I used to be like, the reason I wanted to get into tech is so I don't have to talk to anyone, right? That was the ultimate goal. Was like sitting, going like behind your computer, hoodie on, like just grind session. But that won't really do you any favors. And what I learned was you're gonna have to don't be afraid to put yourself out there, right? Don't be afraid to market yourself. Don't be afraid to show them what you know. And if you do that over time, you're gonna be a valuable person. And it's funny how people ignore that and they don't see it, and or it's too late until they notice it. So I'm glad that we brought this up because obviously communication, the same thing with networking, right? With network engineering, at the end of the day, communication is everything.
It's interesting because I literally had to look it up. So we did in my MBA class, there's five big personality traits, and we kind of like went down the list.
Okay.
The one that's biggest, that's literally directly tied to career success is extroversion.
And I'll tell
Like,
you this, like, you can make yourself an extrovert,
yep,
100%, or at least you can fake it until you make it, right? And if you're quiet and no one knows who you are, like, think about it. If no one, like, companies spend billions of dollars on marketing, right?
exactly.
They do it for a reason. They're doing it because it's marketing is to make yourself known, right? That's all it is, right? And if you're not making yourself known that you're capable, guess what? The one who raises their hand the highest is going to be the one who
That's the
gets the
person who
opportunity.
wins.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I
It's
mean, literally, like, there's something that I've always found to be true, at least, right? It's like if you think about celebrities and why they're so coveted, it's basically because they're known. Because it's almost like
mm,
their pool increases, right? So it's like the power increases, and it's like I've even seen it. So if you think about something like even like reality TV,
Mhm.
those people become famous overnight. Like I literally have a friend who's been on a reality TV show, went from like having less followers than me to having over 300,000 followers,
Wow.
right? And all of a sudden, like for every, and this is the thing, it's like, oh, it's not like, let's say, for example, a Drake, and women are very excited when they go to the shows or whatever, but it's like, it's not just in that realm. It's like with business, he now has more opportunities to succeed in business. It has
Mhm.
more opportunities to succeed anything you wanted to do just because it's more known. And interestingly, like people even want to like if you think about creators today, they're not even real celebrities in that sense, but
Mm-mm.
people still want to associate why because they're more known. So it's like you can use those same principles in something like your career. It's like how are you, and that's where other skills now coming in because it's like instead of hiding, it's like how can I make myself more useful? How can I make myself, because you don't just show up, you show up to add value, you show up to show knowledge, right? So
Mhm.
sometimes it means like you're developing yourself more. You're putting more into yourself so that when you're pouring out, you're not pouring out emptiness, right? So there's a whole thing behind it. It's like a lot of people, like I was doing I've forgotten what it's called. This thing where you learn to be a public speaker. Oh my god, I
The
forgot
Toastmasters?
the Toastmasters.
Yep.
And I remember one of the stats they would quote is like something about people preferring to die than to speak publicly or something like that. And
That's
it's like
true.
uh, it's such a skill. And I think that the skill part, it's funny that I need to write down your quote about skills, right? How important skills are to be able to
Pay the bills.
skills pay the bills. Yeah,
Yep.
yep. And
Yep, and
even being an extrovert is a skill.
it is a skill. It is a skill. It's something that you just work on, and it's more valuable than any technical skill, actually.
Mm.
Right? It's crazy to say that. Like the technical skills matter, but extroversion, showing that you know stuff, marketing yourself, raising your hand the highest, and just being valuable to the team and communicating well is like 80% of the game. Even if you're not really technically gifted, that's something that you can learn over time on the job. And most of the time, like even in networking, people think, oh, net tech is so like for geeks. Like you got to be super high IQ. You got to be everything. No, most of the stuff is just there's procedures. You follow these certain standards that are guidelines that are created by obviously the senior engineers, and then you just follow those guidelines. Whether it's you follow the documentation that's given. Most of the stuff you're doing is not going to be stuff that no one has ever seen before. Every single problem in tech most likely has been solved. Whether you're trying to ping a fire, like ping a server, and you're having an issue, maybe it's because of an access control list, right? Or you're trying to some of the routing protocols you're having an issue with OSPF. Maybe it's because you misconfigured it with the wrong IP address or you use the wrong subnet. There's a it's very unlikely you're going
It's
to
a
run into a yeah.
procedure.
It's literally yeah. You're never going to run into a problem where you're gonna and we work in team environments first of all, and there's so much documentation. You can use so many resources. It's damn near impossible to run into a problem that no one ever in this world has ever solved. And if you ever run into that problem, pat yourself on the back and solve it because you're one of one. Think about that. And that's so rare. I've never had to do that. So people who think tech is difficult, it's really not. It's just that you just gotta know how to fix things, how to maintain things and effectively communicate. And that's all you need. Most people try to lear spend too much time learning. Just and I know people who they have they know more than me, right? They know way more things than me, but they're still like working like help desk because they're so obsessed with just learning and not using those skill and learning how to actually effectively communicate those skill sets.
And you know what's interesting? Like I'm probably about to say a name that a lot of people don't like, but everyone pardon me just for this 1 second. Elon Musk, right? One of the things that you hear a lot that people would say is like, "Oh, it's not even that smart," or "He's not this," or "He's not that." But I've read a lot of books about CEOs. I've studied them, and one of the things I realized is like, there's no CEO who's the smartest person in the organization. It would never happen. They're probably sometimes not even top five. But what they have is like all of those smart people want to work for them.
Mhm.
Again, it might be for very different reasons. It could be like because they're a very nice person, a kind person, or it could be that they're such a visionary, or it could be a million and one things. And one of the things that I find, for example, is being able to have a very strong idea. One of the things that I think I watched a video a long time ago that was talking about first principles thinking. And I think it was applied to like how Tesla's developed batteries to power
Mhm.
cars because it wasn't a new problem at the time. What was new was the way they were trying to solve it, right? It was that I think initially what was thought about was like, they thought about it with traditional car batteries, right? And how
Mhm.
many it would take. But they
Yeah.
went back and broke it down to the units. It's like, how many units of battery would it take to do this? And let's build a dedicated car battery that could solve this problem. So it completely changed the entire philosophy about how to solve the problem. And then you realize it's like, even to kind of like the point you were making earlier, even if it's a new problem that you're faced with, a lot of the principles that will solve it, because Elon
Yep.
did not create electricity or batteries to store electricity.
Mhm.
What he evolved was just a better way to do it. And majority of the technology that we're gonna have even 10 years from now is always gonna be improvements. Like AI is built on no, AI is not even new. It's generative
It's
enough
not.
AI that's newer, right? So it's like everything is always gonna be a development of some other technology that was created before. So at the end of the day, having a clear way to understand concepts, because you can you first of all, you can't explain what you don't understand, and you can't transform what you don't understand. Because if I understand that this works this way fundamentally, then I could go break those rules and make new ones, right?
Mhm.
There's a quote somewhere that says something along the lines of, learn the rules, uh, learn the rules effectively so you can break them something something. There was kind of like a saying along those lines,
Mhm.
but it's so true, especially in tech.
Yeah, and if you just know how to, if you know, like you mentioned, first principles, just if you understand those first principles, it doesn't matter what the problem is. Most problems are most likely solved the same way,
Uh,
right? With networking, we have a method of like for me, when I'm troubleshooting, I always go by layer one, right?
uh,
If the device is not even on, what's the point of troubleshooting everything else, right? Same thing. I use that same principle for troubleshooting everything, and if you
yeah,
just do that same method, it works, right?
uh,
It's almost like 2 plus 2 equals 4 every time. And most people try to overcomplicate things. They think it's difficult, but if you just understand the procedural methods of doing things, it's going to be a cakewalk to be able to solve problems and work as a team, right? Because we work in team environments is very rare.
yep.
Especially people forget this. We work in teams. We're not solo dolo. People make their careers so solo dolo and not as in a group, right? And they don't have people they can talk to. And I always say, meet people, talk to people in person. Right, and you also wanna meet people who are kind of ahead of you, right? You always wanna go kind of ahead because sometimes what happens is if your whole group is people all trying to all trying to break into tech or we're all like, "Man, the market's so hard, I can't find a job." That's your whole community is that, versus all your communities, people who are actively working, giving you advice and all that stuff. You're gonna be, like I said, the closest you are who you're closest with, right? Like top 5, whatever that quote is. But other than that, that's it. If you surround yourself with those people, you're gonna be that person. But if you surround yourself with people who aren't doing what you want to do or where you want to be, then don't waste your time. And that's why college sometimes can be kind of demotivating because everyone in college doesn't have a job and the professors are not working in the industry. So you're kind of in this environment where no one's actually doing what you want to do.
And that's why
Right?
internships are so important.
Yeah. It's huge.
Internships
It's
are
huge.
super cool because it puts you in a different mind state. In fact, imagine like, because in the corporate environment, you're gonna meet more people who are actually tired of their jobs and looking for a new one than anything else. So there's a big demystification happening there, right? Like you go from like, oh my God, you work at Apple to like,
Mhm.
this guy doesn't even want to work at Apple or any other company for that matter. They want to go somewhere
Yep.
else.
Yep.
And there's a way that changes because it's part of those things that when you talk about like the first job, it's some of
Mhm.
those things. It's like you don't even know what to compare it to. But now when you touch it or you're speaking to somebody who works there, it kind of like changes your perspective. It makes it more achievable, it makes it more attainable, and things like that. And I think it can be super critical. In fact, there was something that you said that I almost want to circle back to. So someone said something about one of the reasons why it's harder for people to transition, especially like if they come from like a blue collar family to white collar, is that hard work is a common denominator in those two, but that's where it ends. In fact, in one case, hard work from a blue collar perspective can be very detrimental to succeeding in a white collar environment. Because if you think about it, like it's very fragmented. I just do my job. Like it doesn't matter. Like if you work certain jobs, like construction or whatever,
Mhm.
you may not be easy to work with and you may work that job for 20 years because I imagine a lot of people in their own unique way may not be easy to work with, but that's the industry. Like we can say all
Yep.
these weird jokes or whatever, it doesn't matter. But in this environment, like your relationships almost matter as much, if sometimes not even more, as the job, right? So it's like
Yep.
you almost have to learn, and it's like, that's why people would prioritize things like, golf lessons and like the country clubs and things like that. Of course, on an extreme level, just to paint a picture. But
Mhm.
you kind of like start to see how some of those hard work values are not just like, oh, I'm putting in the work, but I'm also building a relationship. I'm also ensuring that I'm constantly like, people are not getting, if you work in a blue collar environment that requires certification, it means everybody needs it. But almost like in a white collar career, you almost constantly have to be upskilling. You almost have to be increasing your value, because your value is not tied to the amount of labor that you're doing. It's always tied
Mm-mm.
to the amount of problems that you can solve. And sometimes that means new learnings, that means new relationships. And like it takes a bit of different thought process, but it can be a game changer, right? In
Mhm.
how, in whether you succeed or not.
Yeah, it's huge. A lot of times working hard just doesn't work sometimes, right? Especially in tech. I know a lot of people, they spend all their time working like, I'm gonna grind, I'm gonna do this, but they don't talk to anyone. And I can guarantee you, if you're not building any relationships, you're falling behind. And relationships are assets. Sometimes people don't even understand that. Like if you know someone who knows someone, like technically you don't even need experience. If you know someone if you know the CEO of the company, he can just give you a job, right? And that's nepotism. And that's kind of the sad truth. Like people hire who they know and like and trust.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
they don't know, like, and trust you, I mean, you're not gonna get a job. That's why some people's like, man, he's so lucky. He just knows someone. Okay, I'm like, why haven't you gone out of your way to meet them? Right? You could either lull, like complain and say like it's unfair, or you can be like, you know what, forget it, I'm gonna find a way to meet these people and actually communicate with them because that seems to be what works for them. And I'm a big copycat, by the way. Copycat is the easiest way to I copied exactly how my uncle got into tech. He got a CCNA, he started applying for jobs, he interviewed, boom, simple. So I'm gonna just copy what works, right? Copying what works. And sometimes you gotta just focus on that. And working hard, especially in a blue collar environment, you know, coming from blue collar background to like an IT, white collar background is completely different. You should never use the same principles there. In white collar is all about relationships, communication, knowing enough to get the job sometimes, right? And meeting the right people and putting yourself out there. And if you can do that consistently, right? And actually providing value.
Mhm.
Sometimes people just they don't have any value to provide, right? And
Mhm.
that maybe comes from their lack of experience, which you can make your own experience to be able to provide that value, right?
Mhm.
Because companies hire for value, right? I
Mhm.
mean, isn't it crazy nowadays? Like companies like Meta are like paying, like they're paying them like athletes now. A lot of these AI
More than,
developers,
more than.
more, yeah,
They bought a company for $15 billion just for the talent.
yeah,
That was what they were buying, just the talent.
yeah. Talent is huge, and companies people say, "Oh, no one's hiring." I'm telling you right now, they're looking for the right people. They're not
Yeah.
like if you're
They're not
saying,
looking
"Oh,
for everybody.
exactly." People think, "Oh, like like." I'll tell you this right now: companies like smart companies should always be hiring. It doesn't
Yep.
matter because if you have the right person, you will fill a position for them. But sometimes you're just not. This is sad to say. Some people are just not valuable enough for the company for them to hire them, right? And sometimes maybe you are, but you're just not showing that. So either you got to go out of your way and learn how to show that, right? By actually practicing your interviewing. And interviewing is a skill and something that you have to practice on, and most people don't even interview. Some people only interview for when they get the job, and then they'll go 5 years without ever having to interview, right? That's something you also have to practice. So a lot of the stuff that we're talking about is like really high level for people with experience, but beginners, like this is like some sauce that we're given.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I was also curious, and one more point to add to that, and then we'll move to the next thing.
Yep.
And it's so key because I'm reading right now this the story of Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, and
Okay.
and one of the things that I realized was like early success and the overall success of Nike was because of the team. Like all of the ragtag people from, all of the people around him helped him
Hmm.
one way or the other. Like, and funny thing is like, so there are people he talks about as shoe dogs, right? So these are people who know shoes in and out. He was describing some guy in such a great detail. Like he would say, this guy picks up this shoe. He said, this shoe is made in this factory, blah, 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 tears it apart, throws it away, picks this one and said, it's not going to last. And then at the end of the day, it's like, forget about design, forget about this, forget about that. The most important thing about a shoe is the factory that it's made in. Imagine how sick that is for someone to pick up a shoe and tell you the factory it's made in.
Mm.
Imagine that level of skill.
Hmm.
And you now see what I was saying. It's like someone like that did not succeed because he knew shoes at a deep level like that. He succeeded because he had an idea of a wall of shoes that he wanted to create. And now he's able to get people who are 100 times more knowledgeable than he is to come work for him to build that company. Why? Because one, he's clear about the vision. He's worked to put that vision to practice, but more importantly, he can share that vision. There's something that I always say that's funny. It's like, oh, there's a funny Nigerian saying where they'll say, and maybe I think a lot of people, even who are not Nigerian, saying like, "I see your point," but the point is like you can't see a point, right? Like
Mhm.
you can hear it, but you can't see it. But
Yep.
there's a way that you can communicate effectively enough that the point that is a speech becomes visible. Like I can literally see your point.
Yep. 100%. 100%. And if you can't show that, like it's sometimes showing is more important than telling,
Yeah.
right? And that's something that a lot of people forget about. So
Mm,
showing your work is huge, especially in the field of network engineering. A lot of people don't know how to show it. They don't know
mm,
how to show their work, right?
mm,
And it's not a piece of paper.
mm,
It's about, in my opinion, right, is to actually do the actual labs,
mm.
right? And actually showing those labs either on LinkedIn, maybe putting yourself out on video, on camera, and actually doing that. Sometimes it's a risk, right? You're afraid of doing this kind of things, but it's like one of those things that will pay dividends later on,
Yep.
right? So it's huge. It's
I
absolutely
mean,
huge.
even doing this podcast, like I've grown so much. Like I've learned so much. I've like I'm sharing with you now the things that I've learned in previous
Yeah.
episode that I'm even learning now again. So it's so key. But speaking of learning, you also founder of Learn IT Camp.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Learn IT Camp, I created this back in 2024. So the idea really came because I made a YouTube channel about network engineering. So you guys can find me there as Tech with Wall. I have like almost 15K subscribers, so I'm trying to hit there pretty soon. But I've been helping people like even before the channel. A lot of people ask me, Wally, how do you get into network engineering? Like what exactly is the process on getting in? And I used to help people on the side. And I was like, you know what? Let me make a YouTube channel, show videos exactly on how to do that. So I just made videos like step by step on how to become a network engineer, and just literally just giving exactly what I was, how to get the job. And people get asking me, do you like offer any like courses or anything that on exactly like a step by step guide where it's like a full on, almost like a program? I was like, you know what? I'll probably create something like that. And that's where I created Learn IT Camp, which basically shows people exactly a step by step guide, from the technical training to exactly landing a job as a network engineer. So
Mm.
that's kind of the what I went ahead and created. I've been doing that for about a year so far, and I love doing it. Love helping people. Something I absolutely love doing because university is great, but it's just not. It's out of date, man. It's not as good as what it can be. And that's kind of where I created the program to kind of help people fast track into this particular career field.
That's dope. And you're getting one more subscriber after this. And if you guys are not subscribed, go check it out. It's a Network Wally. That's
Yep.
Network and
At Network Wally.
WALI. So go follow. I mean, you guys have seen it, like a lot of great content out here. So I'm sure you're even gonna find more on the channel.
Mhm.
So if you have one piece of advice, right, to cap off everything, right? So let's say zero to getting hired, what would you tell someone to do step by step?
Step by step. So what do I tell someone to do is you first have to get the skills. And that's just the technical skills that you need, right? And once you have those technical skills, and by being able to do the labs, doing projects, which you can learn online, right? There's a lot of resources to learn this. Once you learn that, spend the rest of your time on how can I acquire a job? Like we said, we only need one job. That's just one job. Think about that. There's thousands of jobs you can go for. So learn how to get the skills to acquire that job, which is your interviewing skills, right? Doing tons of interview prep. So by doing mock interviews, looking for people who you can do mock interviews with, right? And then also creating experience that you can put on your resume. You can do
Mm,
that, and then just apply for jobs, even if
mm,
it says 3 years of experience. Just apply, right? Because
mm,
you never know. The job I got required 2 years of experience, and I had zero. So I mean, anyone tells you need experience, you can just make your own. And if you can do that, you're going to be in a better position. So, like I said, my methodology has always been learn enough to be able to land a job, and once you land the job, you're good because you're going to learn way more on the job, guys. Because let me say this: the scariest thing what happens to people is they spend too much time learning stuff that they'll never do on the job. And those skill sets, yes, you did learn stuff, but if you're never going to use it, where exactly are you like, it's kind of a waste of time sometimes, and you're better off learning enough to that like the fundamental skills to be able to do the job at like to you can get like within 4 months you can be, if you spend a lot of time you can be able to get the skills to do the job. After that, boom, just focus on your interviewing skills. I mean, you can do that, you're going to be in a better position.
And you said something there that I almost want to help people also understand as someone who's been on the hiring side. When you hear 2 years of experience, it literally does not mean 2 years of experience. In fact, what it means is zero. But the two is we don't want somebody who's green. We don't want somebody who's new to the topic. We don't want somebody who cannot hold their own. We want somebody, however, who is going to come in and bring something. We don't even really care what that something is, but
Mhm.
they can bring something. They have some insight, they have some experience. And again, Wally has said it in the best way possible. So give somebody something you can talk about. Give the interviewer something they can hold on to. Give the interviewer, it's funny, like we live in this world where, you
Make
know,
yourself memorable as
make
well.
yourself memorable.
Mhm.
We live in this world where like I work with recruiters where they'll say, oh, this person is, Harvard masters, this, that. They're talking shorthand. So it's like if somebody's gonna summarize you and you didn't even go to school for this, you didn't, what would they say? That when they say all of those other accomplishments or educational background for other people, they're gonna be able to say about you summarily. Like, oh, this person is a network whiz. In fact, that's the first thing. Not even your education. It's like this person gets it. And I think
Mhm.
that's what everybody should aspire to.
Yep, then that's it, and sometimes it's about having that one thing that people can remember you for, and, sometimes it's when I don't know, because 'cause I've never interviewed people, um, yet, like, in the technical side, but, one thing I think I know that helps is if people forget about you after the interview, they're probably not gonna hire you, right? So, try to make yourself memorable
Or remember you for the wrong reasons.
or
But
remember you for the wrong reason, that's the worst, and, that's fine, you like, having a bad interview is fine,
it's
right? But
fine.
if you
Yeah.
make your like, it's something that you just have to go through and deal with, like, you're gonna have there's no such thing as failure in my book is always just giving up. That's
Yeah.
failure to me.
Yeah. That's
So
true.
if you go through an interview, it doesn't go well, that's fine, right? Learn from that mistake and move on, right? At the end of the day, just there's nothing you can do. If it doesn't go wrong, like you can either complain, which does that zero, literally does zero, or you can say, you know what, I'm gonna see what I did wrong. I'm gonna ask for feedback, and I'm gonna get 1% better. That's it.
Yeah.
You only have those two options.
And you said something that is because I know we're about to wrap up, but like I really want to kind of like touch on that. Memorability is very key. And I think we all have something. In fact, like I think it's super important. It's like you have to do almost like a self audit, right? Like ask people around you, what is it about me, right? Sometimes it's introversion, sometimes it's extroversion, because with introversion comes other skills. Like, are you deeply analytical? And is there a way you can communicate that? So, along with your networking skills, along with all these other things that you want to say, is there a way that you can show? And that's the thing that you said, right? Show, don't tell. For example, like let's say you're talking about projects. How did your introversion help you? So, for example, it's like, I was working on a team, everybody thought this way, but I was constantly thinking about it, even narrative, storytelling techniques. So, I was
Mhm.
driving on one evening from like, you know, going to watch a movie. And I remember this one thing that happened. So I then expanded that thought process, and then this happened. One of my friends who's in sales, a sales engineer, he literally got a job because of a book I recommended to him. Because
Wow.
the person asked him a question, um, two questions actually, behavioral type questions. They asked him something along 3 to 5 years. And he first answer what he gave was also from the book. The book is called Think Again by Adam Grant. And it's like, after reading the book, it no longer says 3 to 5 year plans because he believes that, the world changes, economics change, this, that, that, and the third. So he knows where he wants to be. He wants to be successful in his career, but he doesn't have a 3 to 5 year plan to get there
Mhm.
because he wants to be adaptable to be able to do that. That's a memorable response based on real life knowledge that he gained to be able to make that. So he didn't say it to be fake deep or whatever. He's saying it because that's what he believes. Then, most importantly, they then ask him a question, another question, and then he talked about the book in more detail. And the person was completely sold. Millions of people have read that book, but it
Mhm.
got this guy. an almost $200,000 job.
Yep.
Not everything else. He literally said that was the moment he felt the interview was over.
Yeah. And that's the craziest thing. You brought up that one thing with storytelling. Let me ask you, for those who are watching, when's the last time you actually practiced storytelling? Probably never in your life, right? And storytelling is huge because if you can have that riveting story to make yourself memorable, well, it's like, you know what, like, I don't know what it was about him or her, but I want to hire this person. And that can be the reason why,
Yeah.
right? So it's like those little things you can add together. Once you put it all together in a pie, that's how you can become valuable, right? It's not just one thing. So stop focusing on your technical skills. I know this was about network engineering and all that stuff, but there's so much knowledge to learn online. You know what we teach here in networking is not going to do you justice. And I'm glad that we had a really good conversation about just all things about job development and all that. So
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And again, one more time, I want to give a shout out. And oh, before I even do that, do you have any things that you want to promote? Any shout outs?
Yeah. So yeah, if you guys want to follow me on Instagram as well, it's IT with Wally. And then obviously YouTube, you can follow me with Tech with Wally. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you guys want to see my content, I pretty much talk about all things network engineering. I'm, all things on what I do in network engineering. You can watch all my day in life videos, all my tutorial videos. I'm soon gonna make like a CCNA course soon. So I'm trying to like make some valuable content for you guys. So definitely go ahead and follow me on those social media platforms.
Go check it out. And that's like literally what I was gonna say. Like, go check him out on IG, IT with Wally. On YouTube, is at Network Wally. But I really want to thank you for joining us and really helping to speak to the audience and really share your knowledge. That's been the episode. Thanks for rocking with us. We'll see you in the next one.
So